and it's their intrinsic
And
nature.
this food basically robs
Sound, feasible, sound like Africa. So when we go over into Japan and look at the Jomon and the Ainu people being the indigenous people of Japan who have been closely compared to the Andaman tribe of the Indus Valley. They look exactly alike. So we can see clearly in Japan, these people are also of African descent. Look at them, look at the hair. These people would look like the same people, the San people in South Africa. These are the same people, the same characteristics. These are the indigenous people of Japan as well. Now, if we keep going over to Australia, everybody knows about the Aborigines. Everybody knows they are clearly of African descent. They have blonde hair, a lot of them. They have dark skin. These are African people. And we know how they have been treated in Australia. We're not going to get into all that. But we can clearly see that when we go across Europe, when we go across Asia and look at the indigenous people, that they are clearly of African descent. There's no way around it. The pictures don't lie. The facts don't lie. And these people, in a lot of cases, are still there today. So now let's get into the whole white race. Where did they come from? Now there are also different theories here, and I'm gonna go through two different theories. The other theories are too outrageous for me to even talk about. But there are two main theories here. Now one theory is the whole out of Africa theory. Now some people believe that the Africans, when they left Africa and they went north towards Europe, when they went towards Russia and Sweden and places in this area, that they got trapped in the Ice Age. They got trapped in the Ice Age that lasted between 20 and 40,000 years. And during this Ice Age, they lost the pigmentation, they lost the melanin in the skin because they wasn't being exposed to enough sun. They didn't get enough sun so that the melanin can reproduce itself, because melanin needs the sun to reproduce itself and to stay active. And we know without melanin, then you will be basically white. So they believe that this whole transformation happened during the Ice Age, where these black people, these Africans, got trapped and they had to live in caves, and that they didn't see the sun for hundreds of years in some cases, and they didn't get enough sun exposure, and that they somehow mutated or changed into the white race. This is one theory. Now, here's the problem with this whole theory. Human beings, black people, Africans, we are not ectotherms, meaning we have internal heats. We are endotherms. We have internal heat. Now, when we look at ectotherms like reptiles, reptiles, they need to feel the sun on the surface of their skin because they don't have any internal body heat. If they don't get that sun on their skin, they can't really warm up because they don't generate enough body heat. So we have seen in these National Geographic TV shows with snakes and reptiles that if they do not get enough sun exposure, they will basically die. A snake will just curl up and die if he does not get enough sun. Now, animals like polar bears and cheetahs, they have internal body heat. Polar bears can go and swim in that water because they body heat. They have a lot of fat and they generate a lot of body heat. Now, a cheetah can run so fast and generate so much body heat that it kills them. Imagine that you run so fast, you get so hot and you just die. They can run so fast, they can generate so much body heat that goes to their brain and they'll just pass out and die, by running and chasing an animal. This is why they stop sometimes when they chase them. They can't chase them but so far because they'll overheat and they'll die. Same thing with humans is we have internal body heat. We are endotherms. We have internal body heat, meaning that no matter how cold it gets, we can survive it. We can live through it up to a point. As long as we take care of ourselves and we wrap up and, we're not exposed to, really cold winds and, frigid temperatures, we can basically survive in the cold. Now, when we look at the Eskimos, and they have lived in the cold for thousands of years, and they are basically brown-skinned people, and they never turn white. So a lot of scientists look at it and see that we are endothermic, and that is enough. We generate enough heat to basically protect our melanin. So I hate to say it like this, but urine is warm. Fecal matter is warm. You piss hot, you poop hot. It's warm. When you blow your breath on the back of your hand, it's warm. When you are in cold weather and you blow out, you see the smoke because we are internally warm. So this should be enough to keep our melanin regenerating. Now, the thing is, when you look around the world, there are many different places that have frigid, cold temperatures where people live, like Eskimos. There are places that only get, a week without snow. It's always constantly snowing. And there are people who live there. And some of these people come outside with no clothes on or minimal clothes, but they never turn white. They stay brown. A lot of these Eskimos have brown skin. They don't lose any real pigmentation in the skin. So, what else is going on? There's something else here. So we can look at this model and see that it has flaws and that, because we are endothermic, we should be fine. So now, while I'm on the subject of, the cold and cold places, this is going to give me an opportunity to get into the north of Europe, places like Sweden, where I'm at now, and Russia, and Norway, and Finland, and places like this. Who are the indigenous people of these places? And we look at the Sami or the Sami people that are in northern Finland, northern Sweden, northern Russia, northern Norway. These people are the indigenous people of these lands of northern Europe. This is where your Russian people come from, your Swedish people. These are the indigenous people of this place. And the whole thing is this. When we look at the oldest pictures of the Sami people, they look like this. These people look closer. They look more Mongoloid or more Asian. They look more Asian, like the people we find down in the Indus Valley, like the people we find over in China and the San people. They look more like these people, back in the 1900s. This picture is from the 1900s. This is what they look like. So now what happened was, once the white people came, they started to go into the Sami territory and take over. Not at first. At first, they started to, interbreed in there and live with them, and everything was peaceful. But later on, the late 1800s into the 1900s, they began to take over the lands. They began to invade and wipe out a lot of the indigenous, the original Sami people. So it went from them looking like this to today, they look like this. Now, most of these people are a product of breeding with the original Sami people. So you have like a mix between these Mongoloid or these Asian looking Sami people and the white people, and you produce this. But these people today are protected. Now, for a long time, they've been fighting to get protection because they are almost gone. There's not many of them left that you'll find today that still look Asian. Most of them you'll see today look like this. They look like white people. Now here in Sweden, we call them like Laplanders. It's called Lapland. Now we have Laplanders in Lapland. They own a whole lot of Sweden. They own a whole lot of land here. These people are protected people, and they are well respected by the Swedish people. Now, they protect the Sami people today. Russia protects them. Finland protects them. Sweden. Everybody got together and they protect these people today. Well, they have to because they're almost gone. And you have this, this mixture of this white man and the indigenous original people of northern Sweden and Russia today. They are all protected today. But this is where these people come from. Now we can look at these people back then and we can trace them back to Africa and see that originally these people were black people, just like in China, just like in Asia, and they come from Africa. Now, the second theory is the one that most scientists agree with today. They didn't always agree with this theory because of racism and politics, and I'll explain that later. Now, this is the one that I personally agree with as well. And if you're not convinced after I say it, then I will convince you. Trust me, you'll be convinced when this video is over. So now, the thing is, some scholars believe that when the Africans left Africa and headed to northern Europe, headed towards these areas like Finland and stuff like that, that they did get trapped in this ice age. But they did not immediately turn white, after years and years of non-exposure to the sun and, exposure to the frigid temperature. They didn't immediately turn white. That at some point, genetic deficiency was produced. And it was produced in everybody who had to live through this ice age. Everybody who survived in it, that was in this area, in these really cold, frigid climates, that this disease or this I'm not going to call it a disease. Let's just call it this gene was produced and it changed people. Now, this gene is basically called OCA1 and OCA2. It's oculocutaneous albinism. Albinism 1, albinism 2, oculocutaneous. Now, we can see that albinism exists in animals. Everybody have seen albino crocodiles or albino gorillas, albino tigers. It's albino animals all over the place. But we know completely well that we have albino humans. Now, this is going to be hard for a lot of people to accept, but it's the one that fits and it makes the most sense, and science backs it up, and we're going to go through it. And to me, after you see this, it's just like really completely obvious. So now, oculocutaneous 1 is a severe case of albinism. Now, its prototypical traits are basically white skin, blonde hair, and gray eyes. Now, in severe cases, the eyesight could become diminished or the person could become blind with OCA1. Now, oculocutaneous 2 is the more common form of albinism, and its prototypical traits are blonde hair or red hair, blue eyes or green eyes or gray eyes. Where do we find these traits at? We find them in white people. But here is the kicker. Albinism, oculocutaneous 2, oculocutaneous 1 is found in every single race of people on the face of the earth. That is the kicker. Why is that the kicker? Because we can trace it all the way back to African people. So this is proof positive that this is the source. So if you are not my son, I can't pass something down to you. So you come from me. It is hereditary. And the fact that these Africans in this area who have albinism, who have OCA1 and OCA2, the fact that these people have never left Africa, they have never been out in the world and seen and experienced the rest of the world. A lot of these tribes have never left. They have always been here. So how could they affect the rest of the world? Now, this is the Bahadi tribe in Pakistan. Have you ever seen an albino Pakistani? Here you go. Look at the hair. You have red hair. You have blonde hair. These people are everywhere. This is albinism. This is where this white race comes from. But we're going to go into it further. If you ain't convinced yet, you will be. So now understand, this is going to be hard for a lot of people to accept. I know a lot of people are not going to want to agree with it, and a lot of people are going to feel some type of way about what I'm going to say. But understand, OCA1 and OCA2 is caused by a defect or a deficit in the production of melanin and the absence of pigmentation in the skin. So now think about nature. Nature gives you what you need. Nature does not make mistakes. So why is it that black people have so much melanin? Why are we so dark? Because we were created in Africa, and Africa is hot and the sun is highly exposed there. So nature says that, okay, I have to give you something to protect you from this sun. Thus, melanin. This is why we have so much of it. So now let's take this thing back to nature. Let's think about the people that got trapped in this ice age. Think about when a woman became pregnant. Now, when a woman gives birth, this is nature at work. This is a natural event. This is the work of the creator or the work of God. Now, what did the ancient Egyptians call God? They call them Neterus, or they call them Netchers. This is where we get the word nature, because they believe that the woman was God. That's why we call it Mother Nature. So now, you cannot get a man from a man. You can't get a woman from a man, but you can get a man and a woman from a woman, because the woman is the creator. This is why they believe that the black woman was God, because the black woman, being the original woman, would be the original God. This is not to take anything away from white women. Let's not pretend like they can't give birth or they can't have babies. They are gods as well. They come from black women. But black woman, being the original woman, she's the original God. So now, let's look at nature here. Let's think about nature. Forget all the bull. Nature is saying, wait a minute. We are not in Africa no more. It's not hot here. So we have to conform to this atmosphere, to this temperature, to this climate. So nature is saying with this baby in the womb that we need to change. So now nature's saying, we don't need this kinky hair. We need longer hair. We need hair to protect our ears from the cold, to protect our face and neck. We don't need this broad nose. We need a thinner nose because we don't want to be inhaling all this cold air going to the brain. We don't need thick lips. We don't need the skin complexion. We don't need all this melanin because there's not so much sun here that's going to damage us. This is nature. Nature made this change, and in doing so, it created OCA1 and OCA2. And this is the truth, whether you want to accept it or not. Put away all the emotional bullcrap. Put away all the history, put away your personal feelings about black people and white people, and accept the truth. This is what's taking place. It is a natural thing. This is nature. Now, had these people stayed in this cold, frigid temperature, this wouldn't be a problem. Had they stayed in this cold climate, this wouldn't be an issue. They would just have changed and adapted and evolved with the climate. Now, as I said, Oculocutaneous 1 is a severe case of albinism. Oculocutaneous 2, or OCA2, is the more common form of albinism. But just like in genetics, when you trace something back to patient 0 will basically have different traits of this disease or this, mutation. You'll be able to find something different inside patient 0 that will point to patient 0 being the initial carrier or the originator of this specific mutation or disease. So I told you about OCA1 and OCA2, but there exists OCA3 and OCA4. Now, OCA3 and OCA4 can only be found in black people.